Good morning. We're going to talk about inspiration. Everybody want to talk about inspiration? No? I can go. My name is Michael, as you heard, and I am here to talk about inspiration. So I'd like to begin by asking you all to please stand up. Stand up. I want to ask you a very basic question, which is, what do we all have in common here, all of us? Every single person in this room, in fact, every human being. What do we all have in common? We all breathe. So everybody else, Jonathan got the right answer. We all breathe. There's other things we probably all do, but breathing is the one that we all do, right? So let's do it together. Breathe in. Together. Breathe in. And breathe out. Now pay attention to your breath. Breathe in. And breathe out. Breathe in together. Now notice people around you breathing in sync with you. Breathe in and breathe out. The intentionality of breathing we don't always actually do, right? We're not always breathing with intention. We're not always noticing our breath. Keep breathing. Don't stop. In fact, for the rest of my talk, for the rest of the time I'm here, for the next half hour, please don't stop breathing. Okay? But now what I'd like you to do is keep breathing. You can sit down if you like. If you want to keep standing, you can. Up to you. We're going to carry on now, but please keep breathing. Breathing in, breathing out, intentionally feeling your breath, letting it go through you. Some of you are excited to be standing, so you can stay standing if you want to. But keep breathing. Breathe in and out, right? And while we're talking about what we're talking about today, please keep breathing. Don't stop. All right. Do you ever struggle to feel inspired? Excellent. Raise your hand if you never struggle to feel inspired. Just checking. Never. Okay. Please stand up. We're going to come back to you later. What's your name? Taryn. Taryn is an example for us all, I think. So here's the good news. After the next 25 minutes or so, hopefully you will have the key to understand how never to ever have to struggle to feel inspired again. Would that be good? Because the truth is, right, inspiration is important, isn't it? What is it? What is inspiration? Y'all just said it's important. So you must know what it is, right? What is inspiration? Great. That is very close to the Oxford Dictionary's definition. Oxford Dictionary definition is this, roughly, being mentally stimulated to do something creative. Now, when I say creative, a lot of people immediately think of like poetry or something, right? Music. That is creative, but there's a lot more to creative than that. Creativity is what we do, right? When I asked you at the beginning, what is it that we all have in common? It's actually at least two things. We all breathe. Are you still breathing? You noticing that you're still breathing? How many people forgot that you're breathing? A lot, right? So we all breathe, hopefully, and we are all creative. Being creative is our right as human beings. It is not about, poetry and dance. It's about everything we do, right? When you are working with people on the phone lines or whatever you're doing in SADAG, you need to be creative all the time, don't you? You have to respond to things you don't expect or understand. That's creativity, isn't it? Being mentally stimulated to do something creative is the number one definition of inspiration in the dictionary. There's a second definition, which we're going to get to a bit later. The question is this: where does it come from? Because that's the title of the talk, right? What's the source of inspiration? Does inspiration come from inside you, or does it come from your environment? Your experience, the things that happen. The question we're going to start with here, what inspires you? You, specifically. And I mean, what inspires you, specifically? What inspires you? Anybody, what inspires you? Yeah?
Nature.
Nature. Yeah, that's common. Okay, well, how about this? How many people are inspired by cities? Morning? How many people are inspired in the morning? Raise your hand if you're inspired in the morning. You're a morning person. Raise your hand if you're inspired at night. Okay, now keep your hand up if you're inspired both in the morning and at night. Did you notice that the entire room put their hand up for either morning or night pretty much? I don't think anybody left it out. Taryn, of course, is inspired by both. That's obvious. Family. Raise your hand for family. On the other hand, solitude. How many people are inspired by being alone? Oh, even more. Wow. Okay. Flying. Anybody? Or dreaming of flying? Now here's a weird one. Anybody inspired by drowning? That guy is. Yoshiro Nakamatsu. Anybody know who he is? He's invented over 3,000 patents. He's got over 3,000 patents. He's invented some things that you've heard of, like the floppy disk he claims to have invented, I think. He's inspired by drowning. He puts himself in a pool at the bottom of the pool until he can't breathe. And at the moment of like when he's about to drown is when he has his insights and inspiration. The point is, different people have different ways of being inspired, right? So when you think about this, most of the list we've looked at is stuff that's outside, right? All that stuff we just saw on that list is stuff outside of us. So that makes us think, okay, inspiration mostly comes, at least mostly comes from outside forces, yeah? How many of you kind of agree with that? Inspiration seems to mostly come, at least mostly, from outside forces. The rest of you, are you saying that you feel it mostly comes from inside? So why is it that all these things on your list are outside things?
I would almost argue it's your internal reaction to these external factors.
It's an internal response to the external situation. The fact is that for most of history, people have said that inspiration came from outside. Not only did it only come from outside, but it could only come from outside. The Greeks, which was the beginning of sort of recorded history, right? Written history, they did not believe that human beings could be inspired creatively. They could not have creative thoughts at all. All we could do was copy the gods, right? And the word for art or creativity in Greek was techne, which is the same root for technology or technique. It means a method or a practice. It is not inspiration at all. It is trying to copy what exists, right? The artist in Greek tradition was a discoverer, not an innovator, not a creator. The artist did discovery of things that already existed. Only the gods could create from nothing, ex nihilo. Right? We had to follow the rules that the gods put there for us, and this continued as the reality for most of time. William Blake, who's a poet from the 1500s, said basically that the Holy Spirit does everything, I don't do anything, right? It's a typical attitude. Yeah, I didn't do this, God did it. Johannes Brahms, 200 years later, said the same thing, God speaks through me. And most importantly of all, this gentleman, anybody know this guy? The man in black, Johnny Cash, says creative people have to be fed from the divine source. Again, it is God that gives us inspiration. We do not have the capacity for it ourselves. That has been the way most of history has seen inspiration. So we sit here and think, oh, it comes from inside me, but that goes against like pretty much 2,000 years of history and some pretty big minds about it. I, in my 20s, which was a number of years ago, I'm not going to count, I went to live in Prague. You'll notice from my accent, by the way, I'm not from here. Right? I live in Randburg, which is not that far away, but still a different city, actually. It is a different city than Santa. Yeah. So Prague, I went there to become inspired to work on a novel that I wanted to write when I was young. At the time, I wanted to be inspired by that architecture, right? The beauty of that, hundreds of years old. I wanted to be inspired by all the people from around the world that were gathering in Prague to be inspired by each other. And most of all, most importantly of all, the Czech beer. How many people here are inspired by some kind of substance, whether it's food or drugs, let's be honest? Nobody here is inspired by food? Are you guys still breathing? Everybody breathe in. Breathe in. Remember, it unites us, so breathe in and breathe out. So here's the problem. Sometimes I was inspired and sometimes I wasn't. Sometimes the architecture was inspiring to me and some days I was depressed as hell. It's like, oh my God, I got to do this thing. I wasn't inspired at all by these things. You ever have that experience, something that you find inspiring one day and then the next day it's not? And we go back to that first question I asked you, like what, do you struggle to be inspired? So I decided after about 4 years of this, I would do something different. So I took a train 3 hours from Prague to a little village called Mikulov, which instead of being in Bohemia, this is really called Bohemia, it was in a place called Moravia. And it was a little village called Mikulov, picturesque, no foreign people there, except me. I also brought a big bag of marijuana from Prague with me. And I thought between the marijuana and the little churches and the solitude and all that would inspire me, and guess what happened? Yeah, the same thing happened, right? Some days I was inspired, other days I was not. So this idea that somehow inspiration comes from outside didn't make a lot of sense to me, but it seems to be the thing that people said for years, right? For centuries. So I then discovered this quote, American writer from about 100 years ago called Jack London. You can't wait for inspiration to happen. You have to go out after it with a club. You have to go and get it. Then there's a guy named William Faulkner, another American writer from a similar period, and he said this other very cool quote, I only write when I'm inspired. Fortunately, I get inspired every morning at 9. So again, inspiration does not come from outside at all, right? Which is it? Does inspiration come from outside or inside?
At its core, if you really boil everything down to it, it's inside. Because there are feelings like fear, joy, sadness. These are primal feelings that we don't really learn to feel. We learn how to react, but we still feel, and those drive us.
What inspires you?
I'd say the thing that inspires me is the fear of failing.
So for you, primarily inside. Some other people here, primarily outside. Why am I talking about this? Is because of the question I asked you at the beginning. How many people, remind me, how many people here struggle sometimes, besides Taryn, how many people here struggle at times to feel inspired? So other than Taryn, I think everybody in the room struggles at times to feel inspired, right? That's why we're asking this question. Where does it come from? If you're struggling to do it and you want to be more inspired, right? You want to be, yes? So you want to know where it comes from, don't you? So if you have the answer where it comes from, why aren't you more inspired already? Would everybody like to know a faster way than like all this complicated thinking? Because it's not bad. Thinking's not bad, right? But you don't even know what you want freedom from. So what we want to do is figure out how do we be inspired all the time. Now, in your work, this is pretty true, isn't it? Like, depression is the opposite of inspiration. Like, depressed people are not inspired, right? And your job in dealing with depressed people is to kind of help them get inspired in a weird way, right? Isn't that kind of part of what you're trying to do, is to get them out of the place they are into a place of creativity, of creation? Do you ever have that experience when you're doing your work with SADAG that when you don't feel inspired, it's like really hard to do this stuff? If you're not like getting the stuff done, you're not achieving it, it doesn't feel like it's working, that like makes it harder to feel inspired, right? So, let's try one more time. Everybody breathe. And breathe out, because actually that's the secret of inspiration. The second definition of inspiration in the Oxford English Dictionary is breathing in. Inspiration. Y'all know how to breathe in, right? Yeah. No one ever taught you to do it. You did it like the first thing you ever did, isn't it? When you get out of the body of your mother and like you breathe, right? That's the first thing you do. Life starts. You breathe. You breathe, and that gives you your life, right? No breath, no life. Inspiration. That's inspiration. Breathing in. Now, when you're not inspired, it is like not breathing. Y'all wouldn't do that, right? But you think it's okay to not be inspired. And you make excuses. I don't feel like it. I haven't thought it through. I haven't analyzed yet what it is that has me feeling different. Inspiration simply means breathing in, and that the two definitions, the one before about the motivation to take creative action and breathing in, are the same definition. Do you start to see a little bit differently the idea of how do you become inspired more easily? Everybody breathe. One more time, breathe in. Breathe in and breathe out. We're going to look at a couple. I need somebody, anybody, to be a volunteer in the front just to help us? Anybody? Come on. Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Everybody's going to do the same thing that Ntantala is going to do. Ntantala, right?
Yes.
Fantastic. Say hello.
Hi, everyone.
Yep. Do y'all know Ntantala?
No.
No? Now you do.
Sorry.
You just became the most well-known person here.
Oh, I love it.
Fantastic. Okay, so I'm going to ask you to do a very simple exercise, right?
Okay.
And everybody needs to do this exercise together. What we're going to do is take a deep breath and then breathe out, right? Don't do it yet. Take a deep breath and breathe out. And when we breathe all the way out, give me a sentence, any sentence.
You learn something new every day.
There we go. Okay, so when you see how important she is? You can make all of you say that sentence. When you breathe all your air out, right? At the end of your breath, when there's no breath left in your lungs, say that sentence. You learn something new every day. Don't breathe in first. Breathe all your air out. And when you get to the end, say the sentence. All your air, all. Don't breathe. You can't do it, right? Everybody here read the Bible, right? In the beginning was the Word. Well, that is not true. It can't be true. Because in the beginning was the breath. You can't speak without breathing. It's not possible. Somehow they forgot to put it there. In the beginning was the breath. Then there was the Word. So in the beginning was inspiration. You can't do anything without inspiration. Point number one. We're not done with you yet. I'm going to try a second similar exercise. This time breathe in, breathe all your air out, and when your air goes out, don't say anything, just hold your breath. Don't breathe back in. Don't breathe back in. Okay, everybody do this exercise as well, right? Breathe in, everybody. And breathe all your air out. Breathe all your air out. The world record, anybody know what the world record is? 24 minutes, 30 seconds. You're breathing already.
I can't.
What are you doing?
I cannot.
I didn't tell you to breathe.
That 24. Did you just say 24 minutes?
24 minutes, 37 seconds. Put me your show
I
back.
lost it when you said 24 minutes. That's made me breathe. I was just like, no.
World record's 24 minutes, 37 seconds. You can't do 30 seconds, but that's...
Yeah, no.
The point is this, right? Inspiration is automatic. You can't stop yourself from breathing in. Your body will physically knock you unconscious if it has to. It's a scientific fact, right? You'll knock you unconscious so that you will breathe in. So we talk about being, I'm not inspired, but yet inspiration is automatic. Weird, right? It's weird if you stop yourself from breathing. You can sit down if you want, or you can hang out here.
I mean, if you want me to hang out here, I
You
don't
can hang out
mind.
here. You can hang out if you want.
I mean, it's a bit weird.
But thank you,
You
Nilana.
already told me to sit down, so I rejected now.
Number three, inspiration automatically creates. When you breathe in, you have to breathe out, and when you breathe out, you create something different than what you breathed in, yes? Specifically, carbon dioxide. It's about 100 times more carbon dioxide in your out-breath than your in-breath. Yeah? So when you breathe out, you're creating something. You always create every time you breathe. It's automatic. Because of that, you also want to note that inspiration feels good, doesn't it? When you're inspired, it feels good. That's why you want to feel inspired more often, isn't it? It feels good because you're cleaning your body. You're taking the toxins and breathing them out. Now, the good thing is those toxins are really healthy for trees, isn't it? Yeah. And the things the trees make that isn't good for trees, you want to breathe in, it's good for you. So it's good. Inspiration feels good. It feels healthy. It cleans you out. And I'm going to say something rude. There's a writer named Ernest Hemingway. Heard of him before? Another American writer. Anyway, he said that the first draft of everything is shit. In other words, creativity is shit the first time, right? When you breathe crap out, it's okay, because that's what you should do. It comes out as crap, right? So it's okay. Inspiration feels good because you're cleaning out the system. And here's where this conversation starts to become interesting, I hope. Inspiration is a cycle. Notice that, right? When you breathe in, you have to breathe out. And now we all know from the basic definition we started with that inspiration leads to creativity, right? That was the first definition of the word inspiration. But do you notice that creativity leads to inspiration? You can't be inspired unless you create. If you don't breathe out, you can't breathe in. Try it now. Breathe in without breathing out first. Can't do it, right? Can't do that. So the important thing to realize here is we all kind of know that we need to be inspired to do something. But what we forget is that we need to do something to be inspired. We want it to just happen magically. We don't want to realize that it is a cycle, and that cycle needs to be completed. Because inspiration is a collaboration. You think about this, when you had that experience of breathing all your air out and holding your breath, at that moment when you had to breathe in again, did you notice that it's hard to tell whether you breathed in on purpose or whether the air kind of forced itself into you? Did you notice that? That's because, in reality, it's actually a collaboration between inside and outside. This woman here, Amma, she's a saint from India. She said there's no difference between the creator and the creation. No difference between the two, just like there's no difference between the ocean and its waves. In other words, the question of whether inspiration comes from outside you or inside you is not even the right question. Outside is inside. Some of you touched on this already. See, what inspires you is your choice. Did you notice that some people were inspired by morning and some by night, right? Now, if it was the morning that was inspiring, then everybody would be inspired by morning, right? There would be no difference of opinion or experience. So other than Taryn, who's inspired by everything, everybody else in this room is only inspired by certain things, right? Whether it's something you say is coming from in you or something coming from outside of you, those are the only things that inspire you. None of these things are inspiring on their own. And a couple of you already touched on this right at the beginning, right? What is inspiring is your reaction to them. But now, why are you sitting around saying, I'm not inspired today because I'm not in nature or because I'm not with my family? When you can choose to be inspired by your family, then you can choose to be inspired without your family, can't you? It's the same thing. You are limiting your experience of inspiration by attaching it to specific things, whether they're internal experiences or external experiences, no? So what is in the way of you just being inspired by choice? You wouldn't stop breathing. No, you wouldn't stop. Why do you stop being inspired? Somebody, anybody, why? Why? Yeah. It takes energy. Does it take energy to breathe? So what's the difference in your life between when you're inspired and not inspired?
It's a feeling, and to me it would feel motivation.
Uh-huh.
So like, if I want to do something, if I'm not inspired, then I don't have the motivation.
Okay. So are there times when you're not inspired that you want to be inspired because you feel like you really need that, it would work for you to have that, but you don't have it?
100%, yes.
Okay, so why do you resist just being inspired at those moments? Because it takes some energy, just like breathing takes energy. Right?
I would say sometimes it's difficult.
Is it?
From my experience, yes.
Because we have the opinion that it's difficult. But what if we trust the dictionary? That inspiration means breathing in. That it is that natural. That it is not something that we have to try to do. That in fact it is unnatural, as a human being, unnatural to not be inspired. It's a mental disorder to not be inspired. To be inspired is the condition of being human. Because yeah, we all have the experience that what inspires us is up to us, but sometimes it feels like hard work, sometimes it doesn't feel like we can do it, right? It takes energy, it takes hard work to do. But the source of inspiration is you. Do you get that? There is nothing going on outside you. Like for thousands of years, I think they've had it wrong. The source of inspiration is you, only you, nothing else. Not your family, not your nature, not your morning. It's just you. And when you're not inspired, that's you too. And you're not breathing, which seems like a really bad idea, doesn't it? G.K. Chesterton said this, right? Never invoke the gods unless you really want them to appear. It annoys them very much. So stop blaming other people or other situations or external factors for you not feeling inspired, not feeling motivated, not feeling fully engaged. Stop blaming that because it'll really piss off the gods. And you don't want to do that. Remember this, The source of inspiration is you. So what do you do when you're not feeling like you are up to it?
I feel that when I love myself enough,
Mhm.
or love myself, and give myself attention, give myself time,
Mhm.
is when I'm inspired the most.
For you, what inspires you is love, especially loving yourself, feeling, right? And that when you're not feeling that way, you don't feel inspired.
Yes.
So again, my challenge to you is this. What would it be like if you could be inspired even when you don't feel that? Do you breathe even when you feel bad?
Yes.
You do, right? You don't, it sounds ridiculous to say, I don't feel good today, I'm going to stop breathing. But it sounds perfectly reasonable to us to say, I don't feel good today, I'm not inspired, I'm not going to do anything. Right? You're trying to help the people out there, right, who are depressed, who are anxious, and blah, 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 that stuff, right? So here's the secret, Ntombi. You loving yourself is really important, but there's something more important, yeah? Inside is outside. Meaning, if you can be inspired as easily as breathing, then why are you obsessed with the idea that you're not inspired? Get inspired so you can inspire the people around you. That's your job. Stop being like, oh, I'm not inspired. Like, the people around you need you. You breathe so that like CPR, right? You can't do CPR until you breathe in yourself and then breathe the air into the person who you're helping. You got to inspire others. Think about it. When you're inspiring other people, do you worry about whether you're feeling inspired? And when you inspire other people, don't you feel more inspired? So this is the job for y'all. This is what I'm going to leave you with, right? Don't worry about where your inspiration comes from. Don't worry about how to be inspired. Just breathe and be inspired, because that's how easy it is. Worry about how you're going to inspire the people around you. Worry about the people on the phone lines, or the people in the township you're working with, or the people you're dealing with who are depressed, who need you to be inspired so they can wake up and feel better. And when you do that, inspiration is as easy as breathing. Like, I didn't have to practice being inspired to get up here today and talk to you, because what I care about is, am I inspiring you? Now, have I in some way inspired you? Yes. Raise your hand if I have not. Okay, we got the one guy who's very intellectual. What do I have to do to inspire you out of your intellect?
It just sounds exhausting.
Sorry?
I don't want to. It's
Sorry?
fine. It just sounds exhausting.
What? Just being inspiring?
All the time.
It sounds exhausting.
I can't.
Man, breathe. Just breathe.
I'm breathing automatically. I don't think about it.
Exactly. No, but you just said it, right? Yeah. You just said it. You breathe automatically. We did the conscious breathing at the beginning. We did the in and out and all that stuff, right? But most of the time you don't do that. That's my request to you. Go out and be inspired like that. It's not hard. It's all resistance. If you're not inspired, it's because you're trying not to be inspired somehow, right? So, to review real quick, inspiration is as easy as breathing. It, in fact, is breathing. And if you're not being inspired, it's a choice. And that's the one thing I'd like you to take away today. If you're not being inspired, it's a choice. And that choice, my friend, I believe is a hard choice to be making all the time. If you say it's hard to try to be inspired, think about how hard it is to feel uninspired. Inspire, be inspired. It's a cycle, just like breathing. Just like breathing, in and out. You wake up and you don't feel inspired. Now, if you wake up and you can't breathe,
You're dead.
well, not yet. You still got 24 minutes, 36 seconds. If you wake up in the morning and you can't breathe, what would you do? You would ask for help. Think about the people around you. I'm not saying, like, if you're really having an emotional problem, right, you don't feel inspired. I understand. But it's practice. We've all been breathing since we were born, right? But we've been acting like inspiration is difficult since we were very young. It's not true. So I'm not saying don't deal with that, right? Deal with it, but deal with it. This room is full of people who are here to help other people, isn't it? So we want to help other people. Start by helping yourself, by being inspired. Let go of the resistance and actually just do the following. Stand up, please. Thomas Edison said this: the point is, inspiration's not that much of the game. Mostly it's just sweat. So you just need a little inspiration. Not too much. So even if you don't feel it, just bring a little bit in, right? And Pablo Picasso said this: inspiration exists, but you have to find it working. You don't find it by accident. You have to make it happen, right? You have to breathe. So let's do that. Everybody breathe in. And breathe out, please. Real breath. Come on, everybody together. Breathe in. And breathe out. Breathe in. And breathe out. Everybody breathe in one last time. And breathe out. Please spend the rest of the day, the rest of the week, the rest of your life being inspired by choice. Thank you.